Hi, you're listening to the Professional Speaks podcast with me, Craig McKellar, your host. As an ex-Big Four auditor for 6 years, I now run a specialist recruitment consultancy called McKellar Consulting. Throughout this podcast, I speak to senior leaders from the professional services community, past, present and future. These leaders work in accounting and finance, audit, tax, corporate finance, consulting, legal and investments. In the comfort of their own office, I will be posing questions to our guests to gain insights from them across a variety of topics, including balancing work and life, mental health and mindset, risk-taking, and effective leadership. These insights will help us learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what we want to achieve in our careers. Here's what's coming up on today's episode.
And then it's just softer stuff, being around an office, seeing how people conduct themselves, seeing how they approach really quite complex issues where, nobody really knows the answer at times. Like, how do we work through this? So the subtle things people have done that you can look up and go, okay, I see that's quite effective and I want to try and emulate that, and you start to kind of do it in your own way.
Today I am joined by James Hamilton, who is an audit partner in a large mid-tier firm who started off his career in the Big Four. In today's episode, we discuss the mindset needed for partnership or for anyone being an owner of a business, as well as networking, private equity, AI, and much, much more. Well, James, thanks very much for getting involved in this podcast that I'm launching.
Pleasure.
And how are you today? We're on a Tuesday.
Pretty good. We're in the countdown to Christmas, so no, it's all good.
Good. Well, I appreciate your time that you've taken out for this as well. So just for listeners and viewers of this who maybe don't know you, so you are currently an audit partner at Johnson Carmichael, so a large mid-tier firm of around 900 people, which is also part of the Moore global network and has people spread across the UK. Could you just tell us a bit about, I guess, your career?
Yeah, no, happy to. So, as I say, I'm a audit partner with Johnson Carmichael, and I've been working in the audit profession for, about 17 years now. So, it's quite hard to remember how it started, but it's good to go back and kind of reflect on that. So I started with Baker Tilly, got a graduate traineeship there. It was 2006. So I came straight from uni into that and, enjoyed that 3 years. It was quite varied. I worked on quite a lot of kind of small owner managed businesses, a lot of housing association audits, and got quite a lot of responsibility early on. Even did a brief secondment into industry as well with British Airports Authority. And even a trip to Italy, I remember that was a bit of a highlight for an audit. So enjoyed that, and then I qualified in 2009 just as the financial crash happened. So that feels like a distant memory, I have to say, but at that point we went down to a 4-day working week, and so that made me think, actually maybe I should have a look at what was out there at that point in the market. And I wanted to stay in audit because I felt I still had quite a lot to learn. And that post-qualified period, I feel like you learn quite a lot. And I certainly did. So fortunately, EY were recruiting at that time, and I managed to get a job with EY in Glasgow in their corporate audit team. And I was initially saying, I'll stay for 2 years, and then I'll move into industry, which is, much more, I guess, like there was more of an allure about that. And then, I was there 8.5 years later before I left as a senior manager. I had a really good time, lots of fun memories working there, and then moved over to Johnson Carmichael, and it's been a really very interesting, good variety in the last 5.5 years that I've been here, and made partner as well at that time. So it's been good.
Brilliant. So it's all been an audit. So when did you kind of want to be in audit, or when did you know you wanted to work in audit then? Was it at university?
Yeah, it was probably actually university. You do all the milk rounds and you speak to people, and I think what stood out from an audit perspective was you would get quite a lot of variety every day, or you'd get a mix of clients and industries. And I wasn't really sure. So I was probably the first person in my family to go into accounting. So again, from a kind of background perspective, I didn't necessarily have family to kind of ask. So I was really basing it off what I was hearing from people at university and people from firms that came and spoke to us. So I quite liked the appeal of maybe being seen as more of a general kind of training ground, and that was a good sort of bedrock to get into, and I've just kind of stayed from that perspective.
So I mean, you've also stayed because you've enjoyed it. You know, if you think about that, think about your audit career and maybe what's stopped you going into industry or whatever. You know, what would you say you enjoy about working in external audit?
Yeah, I think the variety is massive. You know, no 2 days are really the same in audit. Yes, you'll have clients that you'll go back and visit again, and there'll be similarities in the nature of work, but the number of people you meet from different walks of life. Every day you're engaging with people who have got a real different backgrounds. I mean, even here, you know, we've got people who have, you know, gone down the traditional university route. Some have come straight from school. Others have relocated from, you know, the far parts of the world. Like some of the team are from Malaysia, some from South Africa, and even Barbados. They've all moved to Glasgow, and it's just that variety that you get internally with the team that I really enjoy. And of course, you're out talking to people about their businesses all the time, about the issues they're facing, and you know, there's a lot of like technical challenges that come. So I feel like you're constantly learning in audit. You've always got new people joining your team every year with an intake. So you're trying to foster a good team environment. And I think if you got a good open mind in terms of working with people and you like kind of working in teams, and I've always enjoyed that, then you know, it's a good place to be. And generally audit teams, if we talk about that, you know, the average age is probably around about 30 or so. So it's quite young team, so there's usually a good amount of energy amongst the team, and so people like to socialise together as well. So it's a good place to learn and develop, and that's certainly been in my experience. But I think as well, one of the things when you go into certain firms and throughout your career, there's always some real good role models within professional services firms, and you know, I can think of, you know, a number of people who throughout my career I've been able to look at and say, oh, I'd quite like to do what they do, and it's very achievable because of the hierarchical structure, the promotions, so you can aim for that. And people are, you know, invest time in you and they take a genuine interest in your own career. So, you know, those relationships are great, and you have those kind of informal you know, role models.
So working for senior people who effectively are a role model is maybe an aspect of what you enjoy about audit and professional services. What about those people kind of made them a role model, you know?
Yeah, I think it's how they all have like sort of different attributes. Some of them, it's how, you know, you sit in a client meeting and it can be quite difficult, and you're maybe, you know, you can go back and I think of a few examples where this could be quite tense. You're a junior person and you just see how they handle it, how they ask the right questions. You know, it's, you know, maybe quite a difficult message they've got to give, and how they tactfully try and do that. So you learn quite a lot in terms of how people handle that client service aspect, and also kind of balance, you know, the audit quality needs, which is really important. So it's good to see that. And then it's just softer stuff, being around an office, seeing how people conduct themselves, seeing how they approach really quite complex issues where, you know, nobody really knows the answer at times. You know, like, how do we work through this? So the subtle things people have done that you can look up and go, okay, I see that's quite effective, and I want to try and emulate that, and you start taking and do it in your own way. And that's good. So the other side is, you then act as a coach for the people coming through. So
Mm-hmm.
it's trying to coach them as well in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and let them make their own mistakes, if you
Mm-hmm.
like, and learn their own,
Yeah.
learn from their own experiences,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just telling them, here's a blueprint for how you have to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that you look at people and what you can learn from them in terms of soft skills. So I think a lot of people in professional services, I don't think many people do that, in terms of, look at how somebody tackles a situation or whatever, and how can I learn from that? Is there anything in your background or your makeup and that would maybe make you place an importance on that? Because ultimately, you have ended up getting to partner where you need all these skills. So was it that early on in your career you thought, I want to be a partner and I know that I need to have skills more than, technical knowledge, I need to have soft skills, and therefore I'm going to watch senior people? Or is it just an interest you had for maybe another reason?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the point you touched there about when do you want to be a partner, I mean, I think that, I don't think there's a right answer to that. Some people will say very early on in their career that's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it was probably only when I made the move to Johnson Carmichael that I really, or at the time I was considering there, I was like, right, I really want to stay in audit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a senior manager at that point, and clearly, you've got a clear pathway then at that point. So when I came to Johnson Carmichael, there was an opportunity to push for it, but there was no guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
You had to really work hard to deliver for it. So there's probably not really one thing you can point to and say, I did this and that ultimately got me there. I think you have to balance it up between it as a service it provides. So client services is important. You've got to be able to build relationships with people. And there isn't like a special formula. It's just
Mm-hmm.
you got to connect with folk,
Yeah.
you've got to show an interest in them. You then need to work pretty hard, but it's not just about putting the hours in. It's about being effective with that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's quite a few different things, and the market's changed a lot as well. So sometimes it is like the right time, right place, and being able to take advantage of that. So I think for me, it was really just when I decided I wanted to stay in practice and within audit, it was coming to a firm like Johnson Carmichael that I thought actually there's a real opportunity there, and just managed to take advantage of that, to be honest.
And just also, just as you were talking about, watching what you can learn from people in terms of soft skills, would you advise those that are earlier on in their career to do more of that, maybe if they aren't at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're working in an organisation and you have access to pretty senior people. I think that's one of the great things about professional services is that from the early stages of your career, you do get exposure to senior people in the organisation, and quite often at clients as well. And you can learn a lot from how they think, how they conduct themselves. So, it's making the most of that, and not being scared to go and approach them and speak to them, ask them some questions. It's take advantage of that opportunity would be my advice. They're often pretty happy to talk to you and give you a bit of advice along the way. So I always think that's that's pretty unique. You don't get that in every organisation. Particularly in industry. I would say it's not always as you don't get as much exposure. And a firm like us, we've got like 65 partners or so. So across the whole business, the 950 people, you're going to have interactions and access with senior people in the organisation. So get as much as you can out of that.
Yeah. And now that you are one of those senior people, you are a partner now. How is it different from being a director? You're now obviously self-employed, kind of co-owner of a business. If we're talking about mindset, is your mindset different now as a partner as it was before?
I would say it probably, well, on one hand, one day you're an employee, the next day you're a partner, and so this probably takes a bit of time to process that. And so I would, for me anyway, I don't think overnight you go, right, okay, today I'm a business owner and I'm going to do things differently. It's probably you got there because of what you've been doing. So continuing what you were doing is right. But from a mindset point of view, you do probably start to think more about the wider firm than maybe your team, your role within that. So you start to think about what's our approach to maybe the market here, what's our strategy, how are we looking after our people. Now you have an input before, but I think you can then you've got a voice at the table to try and shape some of that policy. So things start to change. You do also probably feel a bit of pressure at times in terms of, you've got a lot of people in your team, and therefore you want to make sure that there's good, interesting, varied work for them to do. But some people will thrive under that environment. And again, when you've got such a big team of peers and other business owners in a partnership model, you don't all need to be superstars in every, one of those pillars, if you like. You're going to be stronger in some, and so it's making sure that everybody's playing to their strengths, so you get the most out of it. But you do probably feel a bit more personally attached in terms of wanting the firm to be very successful, and so you're probably always driving to try and make sure that the decisions that are getting made in the best interests of the firm ultimately.
So you probably feel, I guess, part of the furniture even more so, being a partner, because you kind of own part of the business. But would you say, so that mindset is clearly going to be different to when you're not a co-owner. Mindset in terms of maybe commerciality and I guess helping teams grow and things. Would you say that's similar when you're director, or was it quite different? Like, did you maybe have that mindset as a director because you were on this journey to become a partner?
Yeah, I think in the context of audit, for me, it's probably been fairly similar, and that's probably a product of we're overseeing, leading a team. The actual responsibilities on engagement would be similar, but you're now responsible or have an input on the overall firm policy, and that's probably where there is the change that you have that voice to influence the strategic direction that we take, which does make you think more commercially, but again, the way we've operated is you've had that voice anyway, so you can talk to, again, it goes back to people being approachable. You can come with an idea or a suggestion, or actually I think we should be doing more of this in this space, and or let's focus more on this sector, which is what we've done here. So focus on food and drink particularly, or financial services or technology, and really drive and contribute to maybe the growth in that area. I think you have to be invested into it to want to do it. You have to be able to switch off as well, but it's you can't basically, I guess with partner, can you basically turn your phone off and go away for 2 or 3 weeks and be uncontactable? Probably not. And I don't think people would necessarily want to do that. So, but it's about managing that. Yeah,
well, you obviously deal with clients and sometimes deal with business owners, managing directors and owner managed businesses. Do you feel that being a partner, you're able to relate to them better maybe because now you're a co-owner of a business?
Yes, I think you can start to have conversations around, well, when we're managing our business, and definitely comes up conversation. You can be talking to a client and you're very much hearing some of the challenges they've got, and you're like, well, that's exactly the challenges we have, or yeah, that's interesting because there's a lot of synergies there.
Yeah.
So I think it does help. I think just the firm we are, we're quite owner managed orientated. So we're obviously an owner managed firm ourselves, and as a result, I think we've got quite an entrepreneurial mindset, and I think that there's naturally a bit of chemistry when we talk to our clients about how they run their businesses to the conversations we have about our own businesses.
Great, no. And being a business owner, like you're saying, can I switch off for 2 or 3 weeks? Probably not. And I would be the same, in my own business. So it's very true. In terms of maybe something that people don't think about is like a support network as well. So when you make that step to partner, like you said before, you feel there's a bit more pressure on you, and you're more invested in it, and you're self-employed now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of got repercussions as well. Would you advise people to think about a support network when they are looking to go into partnership? And it might not be family, but it might be other types of loved ones and friends and even colleagues and people that work at other firms. Would you advise people going into partnership, and maybe not just in audit but in anything, that they should have a support network?
Oh, definitely. We all need a support network of sorts. I mean, I think interestingly for here, if you're going to be a partner in a firm, I think when you've got, like when the pandemic kicked in, you're talking about business survival mode at that point. I wasn't a partner at that point, but I know the partners here at the time had to basically put a lot of focus and a lot of energy into making sure there was a business there to go through, and that was the same for every single one of our clients at that point. It was about how do we survive, how do we get this business through. So there's definitely, that is a big bit of pressure that comes, and you need people that understand that. So whatever your family relationship is, you need like a support network that are kind of prepared to understand that. If you've got kids, help out with that and help you manage that. But I think it kind of comes back to, for me, right, I guess we're talking about the family side, and there's we might go into like work-life balance, but it's been really clear what the expectations are, and then just clear communication on how are we going to make this work, how are we going to juggle the work and the home life, and as long as you kind of have those conversations, then I think that is key. The other thing as well is, we talk a lot about work-life balance and what's important. I think for me anyway, it's like, you can't work 24/7, right? Because you'll burn out. And when you get tired, you start to make mistakes. And I've got 2 young kids, so you want to basically spend time with them as well, and be a good hands-on dad and role model to them. So it is about just working through things to say what works for you as an individual, and how do you kind of get that balance right in it?
Well, it'd be good to get your thoughts on work and life balance. You've just mentioned it, so people think work and life balance maybe in different ways. Kind of how do you think about it, especially being a partner as well?
I think it changes, right, over your career, right? So I guess for me, at the stage I'm at right now, my definition of work-life balance will be totally different to how it was when I started, as a trainee, and even through at different stages, But if I go back to, see, when I was a qualified chartered accountant with EY, I played amateur football, we had training. I just wanted to make sure, I enjoyed doing that. It was a way to see my friends. So for me, it was important that I made training every week and I played in the game. So I just made sure I worked around that. Now I've got 2 young kids who are 6 and 3. So it's important that, I'm able to do drop-offs in the morning, maybe do pickups from some of their clubs, and then the weekends, are very much like family time. So that balance works, but as they get older, that'll change again.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the great thing is in professional services, and particularly here, it's flexible. So you can be a bit of a master of your own destiny. You know, you can kind of manage your diary. It's much more output driven now. You know, it's not necessarily about presenteeism. You know, we're all hybrid working.
Yeah.
You know, so seeing who stays late in the office was maybe, you know, potentially more common back.
Yeah.
You know, before the pandemic struck, you know, and that would be often somebody's staying late, they're putting extra hours in, but it's not really, you know,
like that anymore.
It's not like that, I would say. But it comes back to, you just need to find out what works for you, what's important to you. Like I try and run quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I think that helps me try and just clear your head a bit. So.
So you find that you can switch off, you know, even though you're a partner, you can switch off to spend time with your family at the weekends, or to go running or football or whatever. Obviously you're there if anything comes up that's urgent, and maybe that's, you know, you make yourself accessible in that sense, but you can switch off other than that, so you feel that you're having a healthy balance.
Yeah, I think you gotta understand where the boundaries are, right? Because I mean, we're all contactable on our phones all the time, right? So, you know, your emails are going, and there's a tendency to want to just respond straight away. But if you're out of hours with your family, you know, it's being present in the moment is a good mindset to have. And my wife will often tell me if I start to go on the phone, she's like, "Can you be present with us?" So
I get told the same things, especially at dinner time.
It's good to kind of have that reminder and just think about, actually, that can wait. I can deal with that later, as long as you're like dealing with it. It's good. But yeah, when you've got young children, as you know, you do as well, Craig. You know, they don't care if you've got an important client deadline, or if you know, you've got a big day of meetings ahead, and you know, they are very much like, you know, demanding and need your time. So it's very easy to switch off from that perspective.
Yeah, that's very true, James. So kids do demand your time, just like you said, and therefore you can switch off easily.
The other thing that works for me is, let's say I mentioned running, right? You know, if you exercise, I always remember when I became a director here, so our chair at the time, Sandy Manson, you know, he was really good at like inspirational, like inspiring, motivating you. A kind of really good role model from that sense. And I remember he said, you know, when you become a director, you're, you know, business leader, you need to be fit, you know, mentally and physically, to make sure that, you know, you're protecting the firm and protecting the team and helping the firm grow. So, you know, there's that aspect to it, right? But there's also just like, you feel so much better. Like, you know, I definitely buy into this, and I know a lot of people who speak to do as well. You know, it's quite hard in the cold winter that's freezing this week, right? But to go out for a run, you never feel like, oh, I wish I hadn't gone for that run afterwards.
Yeah.
You always feel good, and it doesn't have to be a big distance, but it just helps me clear my head, and something you go back to a problem and you can actually think a bit clearer and solve it, to be honest. So,
I mean, mental health is something that wasn't really, I don't remember it being spoken about when I started in audit, you know, over 10 years ago. But in the last 5 or so years, it's come into mainstream and corporate world a lot more, which is fantastic, because I think particularly in professional services, it's such a demanding job, does require a lot of hours. Sometimes you could do the work for 24 hours if you didn't need to sleep, but it's not healthy for you. So running is one way for you to clear your head. You know, is there anything else you do to keep on top of your mental health and make sure it's not affecting you kind of negatively? Yeah,
I mean, the thing that we do here, right, and it's every firm will be similar, is, you know, if you have a challenging issue or stressful situation with the client, you talk to your colleagues about it, and you'll say, what about this, or this is the challenge, and you work it through with them. And I would say that 99% of people I've ever worked with have always been really good at just being a good sounding board.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the biggest support mechanisms you have within a firm, and I think that's quite different as well. If you go into, say, industry, you might have a much smaller team of qualified accountants at that point. So being able to have those discussions, they probably tend to go to their auditor or their tax advisor for that support. Whereas when you're in house, you've got a team of people you can go to. So that is pretty key.
So just communication, openness,
open up and about it, not letting stuff get bottled up. The other thing, right, in this, again, I'm not not a guru in any of this,
right.
But I do think like diet as well.
Yeah.
Because it all impacts your mood. So
you are what you eat.
Well, yeah. And if you're feeling a bit stressed, it's easy to go for the kind of like the snacks and all that. And so if you can get into a bit of a spiral where you don't end up running or exercising, you start eating poor, so you just feel a bit sluggish. You don't feel as energetic, and all of that has an impact, I think, in how you deal with problems. So definitely healthy body, healthy mind is something I would subscribe to. And over the years, I've heard a lot of guys and girls have joined the team and at different firms, and they've been quite sporty, and I think that's you can take a lot from sport into work. And they've often maybe said, I'm going to scale back on that, because the demands of work are too much. And I would always try and encourage them to try and find a way to not do that, because the benefits from doing it are so worthwhile.
Yeah, and people are able to, like you say, work better if they're feeling better in the mind and the body. Yeah,
completely.
And in professional services, it's not a 9-to-5 job, particularly if you want to progress as well. Would you say that is true? That to progress in professional services, not just in audit, you do need to go above and beyond the kind of standard work hours in the contract.
I think I would say, right, probably the key thing there is what are the expectations of you, and if you want to get promoted, right, then you need to be clear what the expectations are for the role you're in, and then it's much easier to exceed those expectations.
Yep.
And if you exceed them, then you're going to be in a great place, a great opportunity to get promoted. If that's your goal, that doesn't necessarily mean you just work every
just
hour
work more hours,
right?
Yep.
Because when we talk about working smarter, not harder, we are very much output driven as opposed to just being there. And I think a lot of firms have shifted in their mindset, and I think just generally right now we're much more output driven as a society as opposed to just clocking in, clocking off, so to speak. So I would definitely, if you're not clear what your expectations are, then I guess the question I would be asking of you is, how can you exceed the expectations? And you don't get to the end of the year and think, I was in line for that promotion, and then you find out, you're not getting it for X, Y, Z. That's not a good place to be in. I've seen that happen to people in the past. So, I think you want to make sure you nail that. It then comes back to, are you delivering? And I've always found, with the way we are in professional services, particularly in audit, you're kind of fortunate that you are able to really flex your diary. Significantly. It's like give and take. So for example, we touched on young families, so we're coming into Christmas, so there'll be there's school performances. They're always during working hours, your core working hours, but you can make that a priority to get to. That might mean you do those 2-3 hours at night or at some other time to catch up. But from my point of view, I'm happy to do that because I'd rather be there. It
gives you the balance that you're looking for.
Exactly. So, and we're pretty trusting with our team on that. Let them go and do it if they're delivering, which is is a nice place to be. It gives people a bit of autonomy.
No, it's good. And on kind of on, autonomy and thinking of commerciality in the past as well and progression, one thing that people in professional services need to do well, particularly if they want to get into commercial roles or director or partner roles, to network. Can you maybe say a bit about networking in terms of, has it evolved for you over time in terms of how you've approached it, and how you've found it to be most effective for you as well?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved, right? So when I moved, I was probably doing a lot of networking before I joined Johnson Carmichael without really realising it. But when I moved here, I had a bit more capacity at the start because I didn't have, the client portfolio wasn't as fully developed, and I was signing up to go to all sorts of events, which was good. I wouldn't go back and change that, but there was a bit of a joke between me and a couple of other guys here. It was like, you'd go to the opening of an envelope at this point, so. But I was just going out there and connecting, and to be honest, now you probably have to be a bit more. You can be a bit more selective about what's worthwhile going to, in terms of going to these events and staying informed and getting your name out there. But the biggest network you'll ever have is the peers who you work with, and that can be people you've worked with in the firms. And so I've always tried to, when I've moved on from Baker Tilly and then EY, really tried not to burn any bridges there, because the market, it's a small community. You might not know them, or somebody, there's always somebody who knows someone. So I think if you leave in good terms, then that bit of networking actually comes back and pays off. And been fortunate that there's definitely been referrals made because I've left in good terms that certainly would have been made if that had been a different outcome. And then you have people that you would be sitting working with, and then they go off and become a client who's looking to purchase services, or a potential client who's looking to purchase services. So staying in touch with them. It's easy as well if you get on with each other.
Of course.
So if you've worked together and that doesn't mean I've got plenty of peers who now are partners in other firms, who still stay in contact with, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Generally, you be like, right now we're in competition, we can't talk to each other anymore. So I think you just do that natural.
I think that's what you learn when you go out there and you're kind of vulnerable and meeting competitors, having relationships with them. You kind of also find that people do want to help others that they know well, if they can. Would you say that's true?
Definitely. People will make an effort. If they can open a door for you here, or come on in, see, can maybe put you in contact, make a referral. There's a lot of that goes on, and so again, just staying in contact with people. And, a lot of it is we haven't caught up for a while. Just a catch up. That happens. The other point is, over your career, you're going to work with a lot of different people from a client side. So if you've delivered well to them, then there's a pretty good opportunity that at some point down the line they'll pick up the phone or email you and say, look, fancy coming out, might have an opportunity that might be right for you. A lot of that happens, but you can never put a time on when that happens.
I think people need to think about the long-term game in some ways. Don't have these relationships just hoping that something will come your way in the next 12 months. It might be a lot longer than that, but it's good to have the relationships. If there's stuff that you're genuinely passionate and interested about, you should get involved in, to be honest. People sometimes will join maybe an ICAS panel or something like that, or the ICAS Foundation, and if you're passionate about doing that, you should go and do it, and that is all part of building a network as well. I think I would probably say, in my view, would maybe try and avoid doing stuff because you feel like it ticks a good box. So going to maybe irrelevant events. Do you mean? Or
going to the events, or if you're going to you can be a trustee of a charity and stuff like that. Do it because you've got a passion about it. Don't do it because you feel like, oh, this will look good on the CV and get me
Yeah.
you know, I can use that to get up, I would say, because I think in the long run that won't really like play out well, but
yeah, no, great. And I guess networking, you know, people are going to have a first impression of you, right? So which is always important. And talking about first impressions, sometimes they don't go well as well, right? And then you've maybe, depending on the person, you've maybe had to do a bit of work to kind of make that situation better. Can you think of any examples maybe where first impressions, for whatever reason, you know, it's not been great, but then it's got better, maybe over time? Like how would people approach that? So,
yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to people, right? But I mean, over your career, you always come against situations where it's quite challenging, and I think of a couple, right? One where, you know, I'd just been put onto this client engagement. It would have been a senior manager at the time, and I phoned them, and they were just pretty frustrated with things. So I was on the receiving end of their frustrations, it's fair to say. Which, you know, it could have been like, oh, this is pretty unfair. You know, he doesn't know me, I don't know them. But you know, you just have to sometimes listen to people and understand where they're coming from. So it's trying to see their perspective. You know, what is it they're frustrated about? In this case, it was just communication. So that's quite easy to fix. So when you kind of listen to that and can talk it through, and they wanted this engagement finished a bit quicker. So you know, okay, you can go and see what you can do in that. So, and then you start to kind of build a bit of a relationship there, because you've actually get a bit of credibility, because you've spoken to them, you've communicated well, and by, you know, the next time you come round, you know, actually like it's a much better relationship,
a warmer one,
and so you'll have situations like that. But you know, quite often, because it is service related, there will be times that, you know, you'll get a client that is maybe is maybe frustrated with how things are going, and so it's very easy to get defensive in that situation. But I think, you know, my view is always just try and listen to their perspective. Sometimes there'll be a difference of opinion, but I think quite often things can be worked through once you listen. Another one as well, I remember, I think it was a manager at the time, and there was an audit engagement that had quite a bad reputation about it, in terms of, you know, over the last couple of years, the audit team hadn't enjoyed working with it, and so anyone that was booked onto it was a bit like, oh no, not that job. And I remember the partner at the time said, look, can you go in and just see if you can try and turn the dynamics around here and try and change the impression from this being a poor job to being a job that people enjoy working on. And like it took quite a bit of time, but we just tried to build a bit of rapport. We tried to make sure we were we stuck to the timetable. We made sure we were delivering from that aspect, so the service was working, but then we really focused as well on like the team and trying to get a bit of a team spirit going, you know, and we managed to build it up to the point that after the second and the third year, you know, people were like, oh yes, I'm on that one, that's a good team, because, you know, the dynamics were good. So yeah, you can change it, but probably the key thing is understanding why there's a problem.
Just listening, and addressing what you hear is the problem. No, that's good advice. Kind of as we come towards the end of this episode, there's been quite a change in the professional services market, with some large organisations receiving private equity money, with some large organisations overhiring and then having to make cuts, particularly in advisory teams. And then you've got AI, the technology of the year, and one that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. You know, what's your thoughts on all of that? In any order, really, that you want to talk about?
There's a lot there to go. I mean, I suppose the overriding theme is change, right? And I think, as I said up front, I've been working for over 17 years now, and there's been a huge amount of change in that time. I mean, I think when I first started, I suppose if I pick up AI, when I first started, there was paper-based audit files. Within a year, we were introducing computer-based audit files at that point. And now firms are on to, fourth, fifth iteration of that. And I think what we're seeing is, there's a good analogy is that, if you look at an audit today and everything we do, there's multiple technologies out there using AI that will replace a bit of what we do. But that's all going to happen gradually, and it'll be a step change. But it'll happen quite fast, and then probably if you look back in 5-10 years from now, the audits that will be delivered as standard then will be quite significantly different. So it's just about how you adapt to that change. But again, it's the same way the audits we do today are quite significantly different from the audits we did 10-15 years ago in terms of our use of technology, how we collect data, some of the risks. I mean, the IT risk environment has just increased drastically over that time. So the risk profile changes, so then you got to adapt to that from an AI perspective. So I think we'll see more change, and it'll be quite fast change, but we've already had a heck of a lot of change
already
in the last decade or so. I think the other question was about the market. There has been a lot of change. There is quite a lot of private equity money coming in. It's not just in the UK, it's internationally as well. So, I think that'll probably continue. I think one of the points there will be if in terms of the investment that's required to keep up with the pace of change. I think that might determine the level of investment, if any, that comes into firms. But you need to have, some of it is born out of succession planning as well. So if there isn't a natural successor coming through in an organisation, then what other options do you have if that's the stage you're at? So I think we are fortunate in the sense that we've got a good pipeline that's coming through. So from a succession point of view, we're kind of looking after that. But who knows what will happen? I think there's probably space in the market for both, and certainly at the moment anyway, I think clients that we speak to anyway like the fact that we're owner managed, and the people that set the policy, the people they're speaking to. So I think they like that, but technology is definitely going to have a factor in what happens. And you touched on resource, I guess, in terms of some of the markets are definitely maybe toughened up a little bit just now. So I think the key message there is that there's always opportunities in audit, and audit's probably, I think, undersold itself a lot, and historically it's I understand people training it and they want to experience something different, but we've had a lot of people in our team who've actually gone out, done something different, whether that's a role in industry, role in corporate finance, and come back into audit, and so I think that actually is a good thing. They've got that different experience, they have a different perspective, but they can bring that back into the role. So there's obviously a few people I'm sure are going through maybe a bit of a difficult process just now, but there's definitely plenty of opportunities.
And there's great career progression opportunities that come with that as well in audit.
Definitely. You always kind of know where the level you're at, what you can aim for next. So I think that's a big clear positive as well.
Great. Well, just as we wrap up, I like to ask, in the next 12 months, is there any personal or career goals that you have to achieve?
That's
and if there's not, then that's fine.
I think we've got, so in the team we've got a couple of people coming through into senior positions. So I think from a work point of view, I'd like them to progress nicely, and that'll mean we've got a nice senior leadership team within our audit practice. So to complement what we already have. So I think key focus will be making sure that is all embedded in nicely. I think we just hopefully continue to promote the JC brand out in the market, and personally as well, I really want to get my 10k time down to something that I used to be able to do.
Right.
So if I can stay fit and get that time down. That'd be good. So,
what, can you see what number you'd like to get
I'd like to get it to 45 minutes.
Right, okay.
Sub 45 minutes.
Wow, that was great.
That'd be good. But I need to actually do a bit of training for that. So.
Good. Well, good luck with that and with the work. And, always great to chat with you, James, when we meet. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Craig. Pleasure to be involved.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Professional Speaks podcast. Remember, you can watch the episode recording on our YouTube channel. And if you can, please do subscribe and share with all of your friends. The more people who listen to this, the more guests we can have on to share so that you can learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what you want to achieve in your career. Please also contact me if you have any feedback on this episode. I'd love to hear from you.